Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. My name is Kimberly and today we'll be talking about Penrith. So I'll be doing differently from the rest of the other new launch reviews that you're seeing online is that I'll be distilling the investment numbers just to show you if it's a viable investment product should you wish to enter and also profit from in the near future. Without further ado, let's get right into it. Okay, so I'm part of GNA Real Estate, and at GNA Real Estate, over the past 8 years, we have helped over 700 clients steward their wealth purposefully as well as productively and have garnered them 19.56% return on equity per annum. So super blessed to be in this position. Okay, so without further ado, let's get right into the project and the developer information. Okay, so Penrith itself is a joint development between GuocoLand as well as Hong Leong Holdings. It is across a site area of about 102,000 square feet, which is what we call a large size development, and it has a gross plot ratio of 4.53. So in terms of the story height, you're getting about 40 stories. So you're having 2 towers of 40-story buildings, and in total, you're looking at about 462 units. Because the land was bidded for in November last year, you're looking at a 99-year leasehold starting from 4th of November 2024. Address-wise, you're looking at about 70 and 72 Margaret Drive in District 3, which is extremely close to Tanglin and like the Chatsworth GCBA area. The expected completion date we're looking at is Q2 of 2029. So you can see here, this is a visual representation of how Penrith will actually look like in terms of artist impression. 2 towering blocks of 40 stories, extremely majestic, and it will definitely have a bird's eye view of the GCBA that's right in front of it. Okay, so the developers involved, first of all, GuocoLand as well as Hong Leong Holdings Limited. Okay, in terms of their joint track records, we're looking at Lentor Hills Residences, which is the second Lentor Hills collection right after Lentor Modern. So in terms of their average price on launch day, we're looking at 50% reception just on launch day itself for an average price of $2,080 per square foot. And back then you're seeing, in 2023 when let's say the interest rates were a bit higher, but of course the reception wise, it didn't show that there was any stopping of the crowd. In fact, if I'm looking at the prices, the starting prices were from $1,834 per square foot. In fact, the 1-bedroom units were going for $945,000, 2 bedrooms you're looking at about $1.36 million onwards, 3 bedrooms 1.82 onwards, 4 bedders were about 2.53 onwards. So I just want you to keep that in mind because you want to see how the area harmonization policy does affect the quantum pricing, especially for Penrith. And the other joint track records that we're seeing from these 2 behemoth of a developer is actually Springleaf Residence that was launched just 2 months ago. In fact, we're seeing for Springleaf Residence itself, it's by the doorstep of Springleaf MRT station, which connects the Thomson East Coast line. In fact, we're looking at about 92% reception on launch day itself for $2,175 per square foot. And I feel it's an extremely well-received pricing, and no wonder 92% of the units were sold out just on launch day. In fact, 870 units of the 941 units were sold out on launch day. So let's look at where Penrith is exactly. So Penrith is actually wedged between Queenstown Primary School that you see over here, as well as Skyview at Dawson, which is a 47-story high HDB, where you see $1 million 4-room as well as 5-room HDB flats being transacted. In fact, if we look at how long it takes to walk to Queenstown MRT station and back, in fact, one way, it's about 4 minutes over here. You take this road, you go along Strathmore, and that's how you cut across to Penrith across this Strathmore HDB cluster. It's a 4-minute walk and it's fully sheltered as well. So just to give you a bit of perspective, this is where you can walk from, and then you cross the road, go down, and then that's how you arrive at Penrith. So this is Queenstown Primary School, and this is where the other cluster of Sky Oasis at Dawson HDB cluster is, and next door over here would be where Skyview at Dawson is, the 47-story high HDB. If I'm looking at its perspective, there are only 2 perspectives. The first is actually mainly towards the north facing, where if you're north facing, you're looking towards the GCBAs like Redoubt Park GCBA and Ridley Park GCBA, which are extremely prime District 10 GCBAs. And as we all know, the GCBAs have a height limit of up to 2+ attic, which is a 12-story from road level. And the other facing is actually towards the south. That means you're looking towards the Strathmore HDB. I've written down the different blocks, what their heights are. The heights are 21 stories all the way to 25 stories for the Strathmore HDB. If you're looking at 4 to 5 competitors, later I'll be showing you their prices as well as their quantum in terms of what's the most recently transacted, so we can see at least for Penrith whether the prices make sense per square footage as well as in terms of quantum perspective. So first, we look at what is closest to Queenstown MRT station. Queenstown MRT station is over here. We have Queen's Peak. Queen's Peak as well as Commonwealth Towers, they're along the stretch of Queenstown MRT station. In fact, they're just right across. And the thing is, the green line, which is the east-west line, is in fact one of the first few MRT lines that were built. And in fact, Queenstown as a HDB estate is one of the oldest in Singapore as well. And it's no surprise that the Queenstown MRT station, at least for the east-west line, is an open-track MRT line. So the thing is, for Commonwealth Towers, some of the blocks are actually looking towards the MRT track. And for Queen's Peak as well, some of the blocks are also looking towards the MRT track, depending on which window. But they have views of the Queenstown Primary School, but that's a distance away. Of course, eventually it would stare at Penrith as the towering 40-story new development and new kid on the block. Thirdly, you have Queen's. Queen's is also very near Queenstown MRT station. In fact, the views are actually towards this condo that we're seeing here, which is Sterling Residence, or if not this, Forfar Heights HDB cluster. If we're looking at Sterling Residences, which is one of the most recent TOP projects in Queenstown, you're looking at two different views for it. Mei Ling Vista, Mei Ling Heights, which is the HDB block, and you have the Merino Crescent cluster, which is a landed cluster. So you can see across the board, a lot of the blocks and a lot of the facings for these resale developments are actually looking towards, let's say, the school, they're looking towards the HDB cluster. They don't really have a very clear, distant, unblocked view, unlike what the north-facing blocks of Penrith will eventually get, which is towards the GCBAs. In fact, being on this side of the road actually gives you the flexibility of having the unblocked view. So if I look at whereabouts it is in the wider scheme of things, so Penrith is actually wedged between, let's say, the Holland Village Botanic Gardens Orchard Road cluster. The Botanic Gardens area and its vicinity is actually where you'd see a lot of prime GCBs being transacted. You're getting like the $50, $70, $80 million transactions that are, under the radar. So that's usually where it's being transacted. And that's where a lot of ministers stay as well. That is where your view is, and that's where you're near towards. And that's where you can enjoy the spoils of these areas without having to pay its prices. But down south, you're looking towards the southern ridges. You have the Kenridge Park, Hort Park, Telok Blangah Hill Park, Mount Faber Park, Labrador Park, which is where a lot of the greater southern waterfront transformation will be happening. And if you go high enough, the thing is, sometimes you'll be able to see a very bird's eye view of the Singapore landscape as well as the skyline. And hopefully, I'm not sure, but hopefully you'll be able to see some of the river as well as the sea view down south. We're not sure yet, but hopefully. This is just how the perspective of the north-facing units will look like. You have Red Oak Park GCBA over here, a very clear and unblocked view, the Dempsey cluster, the heritage bungalows that you cannot knock down, Singapore Botanic Gardens, and the Ridley Park GCBA. So essentially, you're getting a whole unblocked view over here the higher you are. Because it's a 40-story building, so honestly, you're getting like a bird's eye view of almost the entire north conceivable. So if I look at Penrith-wise, this is the north-facing units. In fact, the ideal blocks that people would be getting these views for would be actually stack 3, 4, and 5. Whereas these are the south-facing blocks that if you go high enough, you have a southern skyline view that's unblocked. For its unit mix, I'm looking at 2, 3, 4 betas. And in fact, one thing that catches my eye is that it's very proportionately as well as equally distributed across the different unit types in terms of its unit mix. I'm looking at 33% of the unit types going towards the 2 beta, mainly the 618 square feet as well as the 678 square feet. The 3 betas, I have 25% of which 786 square feet as well as 850 square feet. And in fact, I love that the developer actually caters for very family-oriented buyers, meaning that they would want to stay there for a longer term. So they also took into account, let's say, the yard area as something that is very practical for family living, especially for a family with 2 to 3 kids. So you're looking at 70% of the unit mix being designated for the 3+ yard. You're looking at 936 square feet and 1066 square feet. and 4 plus yard 25% of its unit mix for 1173 square feet and 1281 square feet. So the one thing that I just look from a one glance view is that I like that the area itself is extremely livable as well as usable. In fact, I would commend a developer for putting a lot of thought into thinking about what kind of profile of buyers will actually buy into this place and not make it too small such that it doesn't fulfill the family livability, but also they make it just nice in terms of size, especially for the 3 plus yard and 4 plus yard unit types, such that it's also affordable for the general masses as well. So in terms of its perspective, if we transpose the floor plan to the stacks, we're looking at the 4 plus yard 1281 square feet, the 1173 square feet. They are the ones that are facing the north facing of the Redoubt Park as well as the Ridley Park GCBA. They will be getting potentially a very clear unblocked view. But if you're looking at the 3-bedders, you don't see that there are any 3-bedders that are looking towards this north facing view. Except if you're having this stack, which is stack 9, potentially you might get like a sliver of the view from the side. In any case, I will also say that the 2-bedder over here, the 614 square feet, will be extremely hot because it does share the same view as the 4-bedroom over here. And the south-facing unit types, the 850 square feet 3-bedroom unit types, 678 square feet 2-bedroom unit types, the 786 square feet 3-bedroom unit type, right? They'll be looking towards the south-facing, which if I'm looking at this orientation, you'll be looking towards the Strathmore HDB cluster. They range between 21 as well as 25 stories. But of course, there is a very big gap in terms of the distance between the blocks, so that's not to worry. So this would be somewhat the perspective if I'm looking towards the GCBA, if you see over here, the north-facing units especially. So a couple of artist impressions as well as visual representations about how the compound will look like. If I'm looking within the pool area, this is how it looks like. So most importantly, today's discussion is about pricing as well as its entry potential. Why are people raving about it, essentially? In fact, Penrith is actually the first area harmonized project within Queenstown. As we know, Queenstown, locality-wise, is extremely close to like Chatsworth GCBA, is extremely close to city, and you do get to enjoy the spoils of the city without having to pay its hefty price tag. Drive there is within 7 to 10 minutes. It's actually quite near. Let's look at how popular Queenstown is as a residential estate. So if you look at the median resale prices for 4-room flats in Q2 of 2025, in fact this article came out on 26th of July 2025, you're looking at 3 different estates, the central area, Toa Payoh as well as Queenstown. For 4-room HDB units, you're looking at the median prices already crossing $1 million, which is insane because that's actually setting the benchmark for HDB in the entire Singapore for 4-rooms especially. And if I'm looking at the Sky Terrace at Dawson, Sky Terrace at Dawson is actually one of those very popular HDB clusters where they have more than 40 stories, and in fact they usually sell for record prices because they are very close to the city, and the 4 and 5 bedroom types are very popular. In fact, this article came out on the 12th of June 2025. It said that this loft at Sky Terrace at Dawson just sold for $1.658 million, and it represents 100% profit for the sellers. Back then in 2009, when this HDB BTO cluster actually came out, the 5-bedroom unit types actually were selling for about 500 plus K. And in fact, if they sold it for $1.658 million, they have already profited close to $1.1 million in like cash returns, and that's insane. And as we look at the other HDB clusters that are very near Penrith, in fact this whole cluster of Old Tanglin Hawk HDB, you're seeing that it qualifies for the SERS, which is the Selective En-bloc Redevelopment Scheme. In fact, only 3% of the entire HDB population in Singapore does qualify for this. And of course, you do have the VERS that is coming up, which is a Voluntary En-bloc Redevelopment Scheme. And in fact, you see that it's actually very near Penrith. It's just next to Queenstown Primary School. These will be new classes of residential plots that will be coming up. So Queenstown, you can see it's ongoing, a lot of transformation as well as rejuvenation. In fact, I would say this development over here, it will also command a very high price and high popularity in the years to come. So you can see that there are other clusters that are along Kay Siang Road and also along this Dawson Road. that have been selected for the SURS program. And we look at the private residential plots that are designated for redevelopment. You're looking at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 plots potentially upcoming over the next 5 to 10 years for redevelopment. Of course, some have been annotated as subject to detailed planning, but they are colored in orange, and as we know, orange is actually representing residential zoning. And in fact, you can see Penrith is over here and Queenstown MRT is over here, and from Queenstown MRT to Penrith is actually a 4-minute walk with a fully sheltered walkway. So you can see that's why a lot of people are actually raving and hyping Penrith up, because not just is it the closest GLS that is going to be launching, it's also one of the many that will be launching over the next couple of years. And the next couple of years, you know that they would not be as close to the MRT as how Penrith is positioned, very near to Queenstown MRT, but not that you're getting the train noise from the open track. Okay, so if we look at other notable launches that happened over the past 2 years and what kind of reception that they got, first we're looking at the Ori, which is in Toa Payoh, and this article actually came out in 2025, which is January 2025. So in fact, when it was selling, the Ori actually started selling in the start of the year, and just on launch day itself, 86% of the units were already transacted for an average price of $2,704 per square foot. And as you can see over here again, it's very similar in terms of profile as to Ori. You got 2 towering blocks, 777 units available. If you look at the prices, we're looking at $1.28 million for the 1+ study, $1.48 million for the 2 beta, $2.09 million for the 3 beta, as well as $2.92 million for the 4 beta. And if you look at how the unit mix compares, of course, Penrith doesn't have 1 beta, but Penrith has the 2 betas, and the 2 betas are above 600 square feet. The 3 betas, they have the $700 to $800 range, the $700 to $800, 900 plus, as well as the 1,000 square feet range. The 4 betas, you have 1,002 square feet range. And Penrith doesn't have 5 betas, but you're looking at $3.48 million for the 5 betas for the Ori. In fact, if you look at the break-even price for Ori itself, the land was priced at $1.360 per square foot per plot ratio, bid up for $968 million. The break-even price worked out to be about $2,305 per square foot per plot ratio. And if you look at the launch day margin, that means I'm taking $2,704 per square foot as average prices on launch day. The developer actually got a 10.3% profit margin just from launch day sale. And considering it's also post-area harmonized as well. So if you look at Amo Residences was released in 2022, and in fact in 2022 itself, which is when the world was recovering from C-19 and there were a lot of uncertainties in the world, when the developer launched this, the project was received 98.1% on its launch day, and the average prices worked out to be about $2,100 per square foot. So you can see the 2 betas itself, right? The average prices were $1.5 million. The 3 betas itself, $2.1 million, the 4 betas, $2.7 million, and the 5 betas, $3.2 million. So these are the kind of pre-area harmonization sort of pricing and average pricing you're looking at in this RCR region. So for this developer, they bidded the land for $381 million. It works out to be about $1,108 per square foot per plot ratio. Break-even price is $1,822 per square foot per plot ratio. And based on the launch day average prices of $2,100 per square foot, I'm seeing a profit margin of 15.3%, and this is pre-area harmonized project. Okay, so if we look at how Penrith prices came about, we first look at its land bid pricing as well as its break-even pricing. So back then in August 2024, they announced this GLS, the Margaret Drive GLS, being released for bidding, and in fact there were 2 bidders. And the highest bidder, of course, went to GuocoLand and Hong Leong for $497 million, and it works out to be about $1,154 per square foot per plot ratio. The break-even price is $2,026 per square foot per plot ratio, and if we add the 10% profit margin and a 7% area harmonization adjustment, we're looking at $2,003. 20%, I'm looking at $2,005, and 30%, I'm looking beyond $2,700 per square foot. So right now, a lot of people are guessing what kind of prices will Penrith launch at, because the adjacent resales and the Ori as well as Amo Residence have already been very well received. even though there were a lot of uncertainty post-COVID when the world was recovering from COVID 2 years after, and even 4 years after, we can see the Ori. It was very well received, and these prices, mind you, $2,700 per square foot. So it does beg the question of whether this would be the new norm for ASEA prime launches. Right now, what we're seeing is that a lot of people are expecting the prices to fall between $2,500 per square foot to about $2,600 per square foot as starting prices. So if I were to look at the 5-room HDB being sold, the 1195 square feet, which compares with the 4-bedroom of Penrith, the 4-bedroom of Penrith, we won't know exactly how much it is, but a 4-room flat just opposite, you're looking at about $1.73 million already. So you can see that the HDB reception is extremely high, and in fact it's one of the 3 estates whereby the HDB for the 4-room flat, meaning the 3 bedrooms, have already crossed 1 million, let alone a private condo that is 4 minutes walk to the MRT, not having the MRT track noise, and also having a bird's eye view of the GCBA and being extremely tall of 40 stories. Just imagine what kind of prices it would draw. So I think that's where the hype revolves around for the general public. So now, what might the expected prices be, you might be wondering. I've actually prepared this price matrix. Nothing is set in stone or confirmed yet, but I'm just drawing upon what were the Ori as well as Amo Residences' average developer profit margin. So if we see for Amo Residences, that was 3 years ago, it's 15.3%. For the Ori, we're looking at about 10.3% post-area harmonized. So we're looking at about between 10 and 15%. Realistically speaking, I would say the starting profit margin would be somewhere in the middle because times have changed, and in fact this is one of the very, very hot new launches, word on the ground, and developers of course have ears on the wall. I mean, they're a fly on the wall, they have ears everywhere. So I would say it's never going to be below 10%, that's for sure. I'm looking at realistically above the mean of between 10 and 15. I'm looking at between 13.9 all the way to about 50%. Just looking at how in Mayor Blue itself, it's an RCR project. It's a 99-year leasehold D15 project, but it has crossed $3,200 per square foot just on launch day as average prices. So, and that's RCR as well. Location rivals that of Penrith as well. So if you look at the 2 bedrooms, 3 bedrooms, 3+ yard as well as the 4+ yard, these are the average prices. Realistically speaking, I've actually highlighted what the prices in general are going to be. I'm looking towards 2008, towards 3001, just because of what has been happening in the CCR, meaning that the CCR launches like the Robertson Opus in Unity Street, River Green, as well as Upper House, they have already crossed $3,000. They have already crossed $3,100, $3,200 per square foot on average. So for ASEA, especially in this prime location, you can get to enjoy the spoils of the city with just a 7 to 10 minute drive, but not paying city price tag. I do foresee that there is a discount, but not too much to be 2022 as well as 2023 pricing. Of course, there is a lot of incentive for the developer to start a certain pricing from the lower end, but the average prices I do foresee is going to hover between 2008 to 3001. So let's say, for the 2-bedder, if it starts with 2008, you're looking at about $1.7, $1.8 million. And I would say that's fair because in the Lentor Hills collection, that means we have balanced inventory, especially for the 2-bedders wise, they're already hovering at about 1.8, 1.9. And in fact, for the past 2 years, when the 2+ studies were also selling, for this kind of sizes as well, they range between 1.6 to about 1.8. So I think this will be quite a palatable sort of quantum itself. For the 3-bedroom wise, I'm looking at 2.2, 2.3 starting, if it's $2,800 per square foot starting from. I would say just because of its post-area harmonization policy, the size has been managed, and coupled with the fact that the space has become more usable, the quantum itself has been also well managed, and it's just over $2.2 million. I feel it will be extremely well received, one of the very, very well received unit types. But not forgetting the fact that there's none of the 3 bedrooms that is staring at the Redoubt Park as well as the Ridley Park GCBA. You're not getting the unblocked view. Unless you do get the pool view, I think that would be very, very popular as well. The 3-bedroom and yard, $2.6 million to $2.9 million. I think this gives a very family-friendly option, especially for people who want to do a long-term stay because they do have kids that are studying nearby. So for a quantum starting at 2.6, 2.9, I said it's very reasonable because again, like I'm saying, Again, like I've said, in the OCR, because of the pre-area harmonization, there are a lot of 3 bedrooms that have hit this kind of sizes and hence this kind of prices. So what you're getting here is actually a bang for your buck, whereby you have a more space efficient layout, yet you are also paying the same kind of quantum as that of OCR as well as other RCR like one-off projects. And for 4 bedroom plus yard, very compact sizes, plus you have a yard area, and the starting quantum 3.2 to 3.5, I would say it also gives you a lot of room to make an exit in future, because for a 4 beta in this area, of course the average prices I'll show you later, it's over $3 million on average, and for you to qualify for a landed within or close to the city area, it does require a top up of between $1 to $2 million. So I'll say if these are the starting prices, and I'm quoting you very conservative, on the higher end of the starting prices, they'll be extremely popular unit types just because of the gap between a 4 bedroom as well as a landed entry that qualifies for a 4, even 5 or even 6 bedroom. So if we look at the 2 beta floor plan, so you have 2 different floor plans. So 614 square feet, which is a 2 bed, 1, 2, and the 1 bathroom over here. And in fact, the kitchen wise is actually you can have it as an open concept, or you can have like a glass sliding door over here should you wish. And for the 678 square feet, you're looking at the 2 beta plus 2 bathroom. The good thing is, of course, it's a dumbbell layout, so it gives you more room in the living as well as the dining area. And the plus point is that for the 2 bed 2 bath, which is a more popular 2 beta unit type, you're having an enclosable kitchen. And foyer wise, it's actually not wasted space because you can also fit the dining somewhere here. So if I were to extrapolate from $2,450 per square foot as starting prices all the way through to $3,200 per square foot, keeping in mind that it's a 40-story high building with 2 blocks of each, you're seeing prices range between $1.5 million to about $1.9 million for the 2 bed 1 bath, and for $1.6 to $2.1 million for the 2 bed 2 bath. Of course, realistically, I do think that the prices will land between 1.7 to 1.9 given its location, as well as the other CCI and RCI projects that have come before it that have already crossed $3,000 per square foot. Okay, if I look at the 3 bedroom floor plan, you're looking at the 786 square feet, very compact layout, master bedroom, bedroom 2, bedroom 3, and then you have a sizable living and dining as well as a balcony, enclosable kitchen. This is not the one with the yard area. And you also have another unit type, which is the 850 square feet 3 bedroom unit type. You have, I would say, some of a bigger and longish layout for the living. The bedroom sizes are similar. In fact, they're the same. For the master bedroom itself, the sizes is actually a little bit longer for this. So that's where the area went to, especially, and also the foyer over here. The kitchen-wise, a slightly smaller width kitchen, but a lot of the area actually went towards the living for the bigger sized 3 bedroom unit type. So realistically, if I'm looking at the prices, I'm looking between $2.2 million for the 686 square feet all the way to $2.5 million. For the 850 square feet, realistically $2.3 all the way through to $2.7 million. Now we're looking at a 3 beta plus the yard. We're looking at 2 different unit types, the 936 square feet as well as the 1066 square feet unit type. For the 936 square feet, the difference is that you're seeing more of a compact layout, whereby the master bedroom, as compared to the 1066 square feet, does not have what we call a walk-in wardrobe space, and it has more of a longish layout of about 5.8 meters in terms of depth from the living as well as the dining, instead of more of a broader, spaced out kind of configuration as you do see for 1066 square feet. You get 3.6 meter width, you're only getting 2.8 meters width over here, and you get a longish 4.5 meters I would say depth for the living. Now you're getting just about, if I split it, it's about 2.6 meters. Dining wise, instead of 2.8 meters of width, you're getting 3.15 meters of width for the bigger unit type. And the one thing that I like is that they also not just incorporated the yard, but also have, I would say, a home shelter over here, because it will be extremely useful and practical for families with helpers and who want a newer condo and project. So you can do your washing and cleaning here, and your store could potentially be a storeroom, or if not, a helper's quarter. And the one thing I have to call out is that I like that for the 1066 square feet, the area is fully utilizable in that you also, when you walk in, you don't have those weird kink in the foyer that are not usable, at least for this one. it has given you a bit of space so that you can decorate it, you can have like a shoe cabinet, so on and so forth. Whereas let's say if you go to other units, you do have like a little, this is a little nook, no doubt, but you do have like a small king and then it's like that. So you can't really do a lot of things with that corner. So what I like about this is that it does have an entrance of a sort, whereas this one, the area actually went towards the communal space. For the pricing wise, realistically I would say it will land between $2.6 million to $2.95 million for the 936 square feet, and for the 1066 square feet I'm looking at $2.9 million all the way to about $3.4 million easily, because it's very high development. And if I'm looking at a 4-bedroom plus yacht unit type, I'm looking again at 2 different unit types, the 1173 square feet and the 1281 square feet. So again, the main difference is that for this, you do get for the smaller unit type, it's more compact, meaning that you have all the space utilized. You have 4 bedrooms, 1, 2, 3, 4. You have 1, 2, 3 bathrooms. So that's a bonus that you have a WC, especially for let's say the helper or a washing and cleaning area, the yard area for drying clothes, as well as a storeroom. And when you enter, the kitchen is just next door. The dining and the living depth is 6.8 meters and 3.6 meters wide. It's very, I would say it looks very grandiose. But if you look at the bigger size of the 4+ yacht, you're looking at a longer walkway because it's been stacked up. The kitchen, the yacht, the WC, the store, they're all stacked up. And this will create a corridor. But what you're getting is a longer dining and living, 5.5 meters end to end, and 3.8 meters depth, which actually creates more, about 250 cm more depth as compared to, let's say, the smaller 4-bedroom unit types. Again, 1, 2, 3, 4 bedrooms and 1, 2, 3 WC. So essentially what I'm looking at is that there will be a Jack and Jill concept for bedroom 2 as well as bedroom 3 in terms of this bathroom being wedged in the middle. And for bedroom 4, the plus point is that you're having more of an ensuite kind of concept. So essentially you have almost all of the bedrooms having an ensuite concept, and that's something that the 4-bedroom 1281 square feet actually affords people. Realistically, I'm looking at the prices ranging between 1173 for the 1173 square feet, ranging between 3.2 million all the way to about 3.67 million. 1281 square feet, realistically speaking, I'm looking at about 3.5 million all the way to about $4 million, because this is actually one of the unit types that will be facing the Redoubt Park as well as the Ridley Park GCBA, having a clear unblocked view. And of course, the higher you go in the building, the more expensive it will be, and that is going to be the pricing strategy for the developers. Okay, so are the surrounding resales a positive price support or a warning sign? So let's investigate whether the resales nearby, the 2, the 3, the 4 beta, are something that are gonna make Penrith look expensive or cheap in their respect. Okay, so if we were to compare all 99-year leasehold projects within 1 km to Penrith, and also that TOP 2010 onwards, we're looking at 4 distinct competitors. The first is Margaretville, which is very close to Penrith along Margaret Drive as well. 309 units, TOP 2021. You're looking at about 8-year age gap. Queen's Peak, it's along Dundee Road, 736 units, TOP 2020. Commonwealth Towers, 845 units, TOP 2019. And Stirling Residences, 1,259 units, TOP 2022. So you can see that that's why there's a lot of pent-up demand as well as hype around Penrith, because these land and these launches were close to 7 years ago when it happened. So if I were to put them into perspective in the map version, Margaret Drive TOP 2021 309 units is actually here, which is not the closest to Penrith, but it's along the same Margaret Drive stretch. In fact, Commonwealth Towers is one of the closest developments to Penrith, and it's just sitting across the Queenstown MRT station. And now you also have Queen's Peak, which is literally just across the MRT station. and Sterling Residences, which is a distance away from all of them, but it's also within the 1 km radius. If you look at a 2-bedroom price per square foot as well as a quantum comparison, just so that we can see what is something that is already accepted in terms of a 2-bedroom price per square foot and quantum perspective in today's market, we look at the 4 different resales. So we look at the price ranges. They actually range between $2,100 per square foot all the way through to $2,300 per square foot. And the $2,300 per square foot in fact is actually belonging to Sterling Residences. For every 1 unit you're seeing that's transacted in, let's say, Margaretville, you're seeing close to 8 to 9 units being transacted at Sterling Residences. You're seeing very, very high volumes of 53 2-bedroom units being transacted, and hence it also drove the prices up, partly because of its more recent tenure as well, considering all of them are also 99 diesel projects. If I look at their absolute prices, in fact for Queen's Peak itself, the 2-bedroom prices are $1.5 million, Commonwealth Towers $1.688 million. For Sterling Residences, one of the newer, more recently tenured projects, you're looking at about $1.515 million, and for Margaretville, you're looking at $1.305 million. In fact, you'll see that the 10-year-old resale as compared to Penrith, the 10-year age gap, it's 1.688 as compared to, let's say, more recent one like Sterling Residences, 1.5. And that's also why Sterling Residences has done well, because for the older one, it has a bigger floor plate, but Sterling Residences has more of a managed, space-efficient floor plate. Granted, it's non-area harmonized, but of course, the smaller area itself has managed the prices down. So you do see the range of 2-bedroom prices between 1.3 all the way to $1.6 million, and it just so happens that the oldest resale within the 1 km, which is not too old as Commonwealth Towers, it actually TOP in 2019, it has a $1.68 million price tag. So something that's between that range is actually something that's healthy for the 2 bedrooms for Penrith. If I were to look at the 3-bedroom price per square foot as well as a quantum comparison, I think 3-bedroom would be something that's popular because of its family-friendly layout. So if I were to look at its per square footage comparison, again, not much of a difference. They range between $2,200 all the way to $2,300 per square foot. And then of course, Sterling Residences again tops the transactions with 20 transactions within the past couple of months in 2025 at $2,449 per square foot on average across 20 transactions. So again, Sterling Residences takes the heat and lead for the 3-bedroom higher price per square foot amongst its resale competitors. So if I were to look at the absolute quantum, and why this is important is because now people are more quantum sensitive, especially since the area harmonization policy comes up, whereby what could have afforded you a 3-bedder last time probably now affords you a 4-bedder. So people are also deciding whether a price can afford something of the next bedroom class. So if I'm looking at Queen's Peak, $2 million, Commonwealth Towers, $2.3 million, Sterling Residences, $2.191 million. Again, the sizes are more managed, even though its tenure, it's more recent. And Margaretville, $2.1 million. So about 2.1 all the way to $2.3 million for its 3-bedroom. So that's kind of the sweet spot. And then for the 4-bedroom prices, we're looking at the per square footage ranging between $2.2 million for Commonwealth Towers, for Margaretville, as well as for Queen's Peak. Mind you, Commonwealth Towers as well as Queen's Peak, they are one of the closest to the MRT station. Sterling Residences not, but transaction volume here just doesn't help because there's only one 4-bedroom being transacted within Sterling Residences in the past couple of months, in fact, year to date 2025, and is recorded $2,517 per square foot. So it does go to show that in terms of location-wise, it doesn't necessarily mean that the closer you are, the higher the per square footage you command regardless of tenure, but it's that are you able to command something that is much higher, and it's depending on your bedroom unit type. Because evidently you can see that the per square footage is also higher than that of the 2 and the 3-bedroom price per square foot. The 2-bedroom was at $2,001, was at $2,003 for Sterling Residences, $2,004 for the 3-bedroom for Sterling Residences, and $2,005 for the 4-bedroom at Sterling Residences. So anywho, for the quantum itself, I'm looking between $2.6 million at Margaretville all the way to about $3.38 million. In fact, $3.46 million for an opposite the MRT Queenstown 4-bedroom unit. So you can see that the price range is actually 2.9 to about 3.4. So that's why I say just now, if the 4 plus yacht actually comes out, easily the average prices will hit beyond 3 million, I guarantee you. So if I were to look at the resale comparisons by per square footage across the non-area harmonized project, namely Sterling Residences, Margaretville, Queenstown, as well as Commonwealth Towers, you're looking between $2,001 to $2,300 per square foot for the 2-bedder. For the 3-bedder, they kind of hover between $2,002 to $2,300 per square foot. And a 4-bedder, of course, the other older resales like Margaretville, Queen's Peak, as well as Commonwealth Towers, they hover in the $2,200 range. But increasingly, you'd see that the Sterling Residences has a $2,517 per square foot transaction. The volume for the 4-bedder is extremely low, so of course, this is extremely skewed to that one transaction that happened, especially for Sterling Residences. But more importantly, based on the price per square foot I've laid out over here, realistically speaking, of course, I'm saying that the prices will be averaging about 2,008 to about 3,000 over, just based on what has happened in the wider market in RCR. Arena East has crossed $3,500 per square foot on average on launch day. And then, of course, you also have other RCR projects like Promenade Peak, $3,354 per square foot on average on launch day itself, 54% reception. So RCR itself, it won't be past $3,000. I'll be surprised if it's past $3,000 on average. But I'd say, realistically speaking, it might be in the 2,728 to 2,9 range just on average for launch day itself. Of course, there might be price hike down the road, but I'm looking at towards the launch day. So 2-bedrooms wise, if you are at 2.6 per square foot or even 2.8 per square foot, let's just look at the highlighted. I'm looking at 1.7 to 1.8 million. If I were to look at the 2-bedroom here, I would say it's something that's on the higher end, but not impossible to look at. The 3-bedroom, 2002, 2.2 million to 2.3 million. I think it's extremely palatable. It's today's pricing, and in fact, it's like a 7-year to 10-year age gap pricing, but you're still getting 2.2 to 2.3 million just because it's area harmonized. And you're getting more of a smaller area on paper, but the area is fully utilized, where the AC as well as the RC ledges are not included into the floor area as well as the void areas. 3-bedroom plus yacht. Very managed quantum, $2.6 to $2.9 million. I would say this would be something that it's more on the higher end, because this would be the larger plate of the 3-bedroom unit types. The 4 plus yacht area, I'm looking at prices between $3.2 to $3.5 million. I'd say this is extremely popular as well. So I would say is the 3-bedroom as well as the 4 plus yacht unit types will be extremely palatable given the current resale landscape, just based off of its higher end of the conservative average price per square foot that I'm projecting of 2008 onwards. How will Penrith's expected prices rival against the upcoming supply? As we all know, of course, Penrith itself is 99-year leasehold. It's a Margaret Drive GLS, and now Penrith is taking its place. So we want to compare with other RCR as well as OCR projects to see whether the pricing as it is makes sense. So if we look back at Penrith's land bid prices, we're looking at 1,154 per square foot per plot ratio. Break-even price is almost twice of that. You're looking at 2,026 per square foot per plot ratio. A 10% profit margin is 2.3, 20% profit margin is 2.5, and then 30% profit margin is 2.7. I realistically say that the profit margin will range between 20 to 30% as average prices on launch day. And where Penrith lies in terms of its land bid pricing of 1,154 is actually over here. In fact, Penrith itself, how it compares with the 2026 launches that will be coming up is that it will be kind of in the middle of the OCR, RCR, and CCR launches combined that will be happening in 2026. So in regards to its land bid pricing, it's not that it's exorbitantly high. In fact, the Thomson View en bloc is actually 1,178, and it's going to be something that will rival in its location because it's RCR as well. Chuan Grove is something that was very, very talked about because it's an OCR plot, and in fact it's 1,376 per square foot per plot ratio, and it's projected to be close to about $3,000 per square foot in terms of launch price. Bayshore itself, it's in District 16, and it's not in the Mayor stretch or whatever you're seeing, but it's a little bit further. It's in RCR as well, 138 per square foot per plot ratio. And of course, this would be very close to the MRT station. but the prices itself have well crossed some of the CCR prices in terms of land bid prices like One Holland Village Residences, which is just over $1,100 per square foot per plot ratio for its land bid. Dunnan Road, this is in CCR, 1410 per square foot per plot ratio. River Valley Green, 1420 per square foot per plot ratio. Holland Leong, it takes the lead right now in terms of the highest land bid price for 2026 itself. Okay, so but the others that are below in terms of the land bid prices, you're seeing all the OCR launches that will be happening this year. So Penrith wise, where it rivals against the RCR launches that you're seeing over here. You're looking at Bayshore Road, you're looking towards Thomson View en bloc, but it also rivals against the top and highly anticipated OCR launches like Chuan Grove as well as Bayshore. And of course CCR, it's another league of its own because of the wider gap in terms of its land bid pricing. I've written all the break-even prices over here. So one thing to note, just based off of this table that you're seeing, I've not put in the ECs just because they are very, very different demographic of people that will be bidding for it as compared to, let's say, the private condos, just purely because of the profile of the people in terms of the income restrictions. But these will be the launches that will be happening, and it does maybe give you a little bit of nuggets to think about whether Penrith itself, is it priced beyond its future? Is it priced beyond its current pricing? Or whether it does stand to ride its wave on the future 2026 new launch pricing. So that's for you to decide. Okay, so and the good thing about Penrith itself is that not just is it one of the closest GLS to Queenstown MRT station, in fact it's the last GLS plot that is closest to the MRT station. You have 9 other plots over here that have yet to develop, and if they do develop, if Penrith itself has a certain pricing and it's next to the MRT stations, and these different land parcels itself, they are not really designated for, I would say, a confirmed project yet. It's going to happen in the next 2, 3, 5 to 10 years, we don't know. But these will be the future price supports that Penrith will be riding on, essentially. Plus, you also do get the MRT effect of being very near but not next to it because it's an open track MRT station. Here comes my final objective verdict. So what I'll be giving you is actually nuggets to think about so that you can see whether Penrith is something that is an investable option. Okay, so the number one consideration I would say is that it's very important to narrow down what is the unit types that fit your budget, and especially what is the entry price that is the most sensible, because a lot of the profits are actually made in today's dollar. When you don't buy into future pricing, you buy into current day pricing. And the biggest difference between back then, the pre-era harmonization, versus right now, the post-era harmonization world, is that the quantum itself is a big consideration, not just the per square footage. So the quantum sensitivity, we're seeing a lot of it happening across the board. I'll give you an example. So just a couple of months ago, Canberra Crescent Residences, their 3-bedroom was launched for between 1.5 to about 1.7, 1.8 million dollars. And in fact, if I were to look at the 2-bedroom over here, if people were to buy a Queenstown 2-bedroom, they were paying about 1.688 for the resale that was close to 7 to 10 years age gap from Penrith. But you could also use this money to afford, let's say, a 3-bedroom in the OCR. And if let's say you do drive, then convenience wise, it's taken care of by the car. But for the 3-bedroom wise, $2.3 million, in let's say Canberra Crescent Residences itself, it does afford you a 4-bedroom option. So that's also to see whether, this is something that makes sense in terms of a longer run. But what I can say for sure is that these are the resale pricing that's happened and supported in Queenstown itself. So you're getting an average of $1.4 million for the 2-bedder, 3-bedder you're looking at $2.61 million, and 4-bedder at $2.996 million. So it's also seeing whether you're able to stay within these ranges, in fact these ranges, and stay within the average and not buy into future pricing, just so that today you are assured that the newness premium is being absorbed by the developer and not by you. And a second thing I'll give consideration to is actually how long of a time horizon that I hope to exit at. So if I were to look at a long-term stay, let's say for an own stay, but you do want to ride on more of the investment potential if and when Penrith prices go really high and you want to profit like how the Skyview and the Sky Terrace at Dawson people have profited. The one thing I would take note of is that Penrith itself is inevitable in terms of its distance between Queenstown MRT station and its doorstep. It's 4 minutes shorter walkway. So none of the land plots over here that will be upcoming, in fact 9 of the land plots over here, it will rival in terms of distance, and that can be one that helps to boil pricing in the future, especially for the longer term. If you do decide to enter into a future pricing, I'd say a pricing that is kind of a little bit beyond all of these. So that would be one of the saving grace, especially for Penrith, because what I want is to come in with a safe entry price and not hope that my profits is being made in the higher future pricing. I think that's something that is not very safe in terms of anchoring down a very safe entry price. And the third consideration I'll do is actually to think about what other CCR units I can get for the same budget. Granted, Queenstown is an RCR, it's extremely close to CCR. In fact, it's a 7 to 10 minutes drive away from Orchard, and you do get to enjoy the spoils of Orchard but not stay in Orchard and have to pay ERP all the time when you get back home. But the main point I'm getting is that are you able to use that same $2.3 million, $2.9 million, $3.2 million to get something that is similarly priced but in a CCR area? Because you don't want to be priced ahead of the RCR curve. I've talked about this in the other videos. So you want to be sensibly priced and priced in today's dollar just so that you can ensure a safe entry. That's the most important thing. So for this slide, we're looking at the notable RCR launches as well as the CCR launches, just because their locations are unrivaled and a lot of people buy into their locations as well. Not saying that it's one of the investment pointers, but I'm saying that these attributes of these development have buoyed its pricing of crossing between $2,009 to about $3,300 per square foot on average on launch day itself. So of course we don't look at the 1 bedroom because Penrith doesn't have the 1 bedroom. We look between the 2, 3 and the 4 bedroom. So why I've actually laid out all of these pricing on average for the 2, 3 and 4 bedroom is just so that you can see. If let's say for Penrith, if you cross the $1.8 to $1.9 million, even $2 million range, just because you can go higher up in terms of floor level, then these would be your other options in terms of more competitively priced projects in other better locations, for lack of a better word. Let's say if you have a $1.8, $1.9 million 2-bedder in Penrith, 2 projects that will rival in terms of its location would be, let's say, Aurea, or in terms of River Green. More towards River Green because of its more compact layout. If for a 3-bedder, you are getting a price between $2.7 to even $3.3 million, right? You're seeing 3-bedders easily transacting in these RCR, top RCR as well as CCR locations, transacting for these. Then maybe you take a step back and you see whether you can get the inventory that falls within this price range within CCR, just because you would have put that budget towards Penrith. But noting the fact that the other launches that will be coming up and TOPing the same time that Penrith does, these would be the people who will rival against you and possibly have a better location and better bargaining power for their future pricing. For the 4-bedroom wise, I'll say that the prices are a little bit far off except River Green. River Green has a more compact 4-bedroom layout, just above $1,000, 1,000 square feet. And the one thing is that you do not, I would say the 4-bedroom for Penrith itself, because it's 4+ yard, you're getting between, at best, 3.4, 3.5, 3.6, 3.7, depending on which particular unit type, or even up to 3.8. But it does give you a lot of room in terms of profiting when you go on to the next asset class. Let's say if someone wants to buy a 4-bedder within Queenstown, the supply, as you can see just now when I showed you, Sterling Residences achieved $2,500 per square foot for their one transaction for the 4-bedder year to date. You can see that the prices have been propped up across the 2-bedder, the 3-bedder and 4-bedder. 4-bedder now commanding $2,005, where the 2 and 3-bedder commanded $2,003 and $2,400 per square foot. So you can see that the bigger the unit type, especially once it crosses the family-friendly territory of 3-bedder, people do tend to pay more, and if it's closer to the city, the difference will be much bigger in terms of how much premium they're willing to pay for an even bigger unit type. So I'll say that having a more managed size and a very efficient layout will actually make the buyers of the 4+ yard unit type very in a good chance to profit a lot, just because it's too far away from affording a landed, but they are safe enough to enter and still make a profit before people consider a landed. So they're not exactly at the landed crossover points, whereby these people, 4-bedroom over here, they are bordering along the lines of the 4-bedroom of the landed zoning, except River Green, which is along River Valley Road. So I do think these people, as well as the 4+ yard within Penrith, they stand to gain a lot if and when it TOPs. And as well, it's also due to the lack of supply. So, as I've mentioned, the crossover point has got to do with the next asset class. So if I were to look at OCR, RCR and CCR, in terms of their average landed pricing, I'm looking between $2,400 per square foot and CCR 2009. It has already risen over the past couple of years. In fact, it used to be $1,000 over per square foot during COVID time, and over 5 years, it has already risen to the $2,000 territory, which is extremely well. So that's what I mean. Even entry landed within OCR, it's already $5 million and $4 million like as its lowest. And across 1,245 transactions, I'm seeing the lowest landed being transacted for $4.5 million. And give and take, landed will have 4, 5, 6 rooms. Let's say, if you were to enter into a 4-bedder over here, and you were to pay $3,000 per square foot, you do have a runway of about $1.5 million to profit from over here if I were to look at the average prices for an OCR landed. For the RCR itself, of course, the gap is much wider, $7 million for the average landed pricing, and CCR, $14 million on average. So I'm not surprised by these, but that's what I mean. If you can get the biggest difference between what people would consider a landed for in terms of a unit type in a condo as compared to an actual landed, then it's something that will actually give you a lot of gain. And coupled with the fact that these bigger unit types in a condo, they do have fewer supply in the market once it TOPs, so that's an additional gain as well. It's more bought for families because they want to stay there for a longer time. Supplies don't usually come up every now and then. So with that being said, I hope that you get a bit of nuggets to think about with regards to Penrith and whether it's investable. The team and I at JNR Real Estate have spent hundreds of hours to comb through thousands of inventory in the market to find out what are the best top investment picks, as well as what's a safe entry price today to profit tomorrow. So if you want to know what's suited for you as well as your budget, do give us a note in the form in the link in the bio, and a member of the team will reach out to you shortly. Thank you for watching today's video, and I'll see you on the next one.